Okay, actually, I'd like to pose that question to actually both of the McDonald's. I mean, I know one was building and one is
squared,
right? So yeah, McDonald squared. Please go ahead. Yeah, what do you really think that we really well? And the other question too, which Steve, which I didn't ask you, is what would be the accountability mechanism? Right? It's one thing to report it, but where do you set the levels of like you've exceeded it and now you get your hand slapped or something, right? So there's also that question which we didn't dive into. But Brian, Jess, same question to you. I mean, should this type of usage be mandatory?
I think the short answer is yes, right? Like duh. Like duh, right? And why are we debating it? You know what I mean? And why aren't tech companies and developers, they need to be leading in this thing. Like if public trust is backlashing against you and they're filing lawsuits against you and things like that, what do you think happens when you finish construction? Like we're seeing it all over the country. They're gonna burn it down, right? Like let's get out of our own way and stop wasting money and resources and do win-win-win situations. Doesn't mean that everyone splits profit equally, but like you have to go into some massive work. There should be some massive overhaul, and like these organizations that need it, right? They need to take the accountability and the ownership of like rebuilding America, because that's just where we're at. If we're gonna win, we have to win together. So like in my opinion, it's like stop being ridiculous and like figure out how to do this in a way that everyone benefits, because like there are ways of doing that. We've published articles on that. We've talked about it. Everyone's talking about it. And it's, if you don't know how to do it, that's why I think universities are the access to that grant funding, because they have public trust. They know win-win situations. They can measure outcome and causal, right? But like whatever you do, if you're going to force something down the public's throat, like this is not dealing with other businesses like for-profits used to. They don't understand how to do these win-win-win situations. They've never been asked to. And we're saying like, look, we're in a new age, the age of intelligence. Wake up, like you have to have the public's trust, support to be successful.
That's a big thing, right? The public trust. And right now, everywhere you go, and Brian, we just jump in just a second. I just want to comment on this. Everywhere we go, we are seeing communities pushing back. We're seeing a very strong grassroots, pushback against data centers. And to what your comment said about winning, Jess, it was, I do believe that the data centers and, the AI that we're building nowadays will have very good benefits for mankind. It's just, it appears to be very, very lopsided, and their messaging, is not getting through. And there's a perception, whether true or not, right? Like for instance, somebody that will listen to this podcast and they're going to come back at us and they're going to say, well, did you know that agriculture uses 10x more water? But my response is, well, you can eat agriculture.
Exactly.
Microchips, right?
Priorities people. Like, AI is really amazing and we can do tons of breakthroughs and, but it's like foundational layer. Like, where is the population in Maslow's hierarchy of need? Where are they? Not where are you? Where are they? They're at the very base foundation.
Okay. Yeah. Brian, just to close the loop. Your thoughts on that? Should there be some sort of reporting mechanism for water and energy usage, right? Or something? Should there be some kind of policy or something developed to help regular people know that that maybe AI data centers are not the bad boogeyman?
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I think, when farmers have, as an example, federal contracts, and this occurred in my career, where large industrial farms in the middle of winter with no crops planted are pumping water into empty fields in January to utilize their federal allotments. Because if they don't, they lose that allotment for the following year.
Yeah.
So they pump and consume water even if they didn't have a use for it to maintain it. So I think that the point in that is that it's kind of like measuring efficiency. Communities need to know that they are being efficient with their water. And simultaneously, I think it's important for communities and industry, as an example, in the community that I live in, they're actually constructing a water recovery system where water goes from the sewer and waste treatment plant, and it's recycled so that it can be used for either drinking or landscaping. And so if communities knew that the first segment of water that goes to a data center is water that's actually come from that recovery cycle of the water that the community has already used, then they wouldn't feel like it's being taken away from them, but they'd feel that the resource is actually being recovered and reused.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah,
That's a good point.
And that was,
I just want to jump in real quick, Tom. I could, to that point, Brian, I do agree. That's why, I close my statement by saying I think this needs to be federal, because to be fair, there are some companies out there trying to do the right things and want to report. I think it's all about that accountability issue, but there is confusion around, and even disagreements in terms of what you consider water used. And then how do you report effectively? You have some people that are, again, like I said, trying to do the right things, others that are trying to maybe game the system. We are in the early stage, and I look at this as more like emissions reporting back in the day. When it first started, there was a lot of confusion around it. Now, emission reporting didn't really stop climate change, but it did stop companies from being able to say, we had no idea. So I think water reporting, to me, is going to sort of do the same job. It's going to turn this into something that we can actually hold companies accountable for.
Yeah.
And they can be proud of, right? Like, look at what we did, like this was our water consumption, and like,
I think it can also be an example where you have, a regulatory thing that says X percentage of data centers' water consumption has to come from recycled water.
Yeah.
And built in right at the get-go.
But part of that, I think, is like the practitioners, right? Like those of us who are really doing this, right? It's helping set those KPIs, because there's no way that governance knows what those should be, but we do, right? So.
Right. Like, one of the things that I'm very, very worried about is a couple things. As we know, in the tech world, there is this mantra of, move fast and break things, right? And I understand the sentiment, but in the case of environmental systems, and my background is actually in civil engineering, and I have done work on environmental impact statements, and there's a long list of those things. And I see data centers popping up everywhere, and so fast, because a lot of the federal requirements have lowered the threshold of what's required for an EIS, for good or for bad, right?
Right.
But then there's issues where, what about, environmental sensitive areas? Just because you're putting something in the desert, doesn't necessarily mean you're not destroying anything. Those desert systems are very sensitive ecological systems. There's agricultural issues. Right. Not archaeological issues, there's water issues, right? There's all these different things. And the thing that I worry about is that we're moving too fast, and we're not letting the regulation and the other things, the checkpoints, right, to say, well, whoa, buddy, whoa, hang on a minute. You're not thinking about everything. When you're not looking at everything holistically, you're just looking at it as a small window. So actually, Brian, I think it's you wanted to jump in there, but your thoughts on that? Do you think we're moving too fast? Because it is a strategic priority for this administration, right? It's considered a national priority for us. So do you think we're moving too fast?
I think industry is going to move as fast as it can.
Okay.
I think we perceive ourselves as being behind the 8 ball, or not keeping up with the rate of change that we need to. And so I think if you're a CEO in a company and there's a shortcut to getting your center open, I mean, you're going to live and die, I guess, by the quarter, right? So there is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, right? We're seeing, new data centers being built rather quickly, and they're installing, gas engines or natural gas to power them, right? When you could argue, well, maybe if you use solar or wind or some other renewable resource, you could help lower the grid, usage, and that's another big thing.
Well, also building them. Sorry, Thomas, but building those with that intention, right? Instead of saying all right, we're gonna build 100 new ones in Texas. It's why aren't we sitting down and saying, all right, let's map it all out. Where's the best places to do it, right? We've written articles and these. Right?
Leverage AI, Jess. Leverage AI to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's it's already we know where the best places are, where you get the most out of hydro, like Mississippi River and things like that, right? Why aren't we building them? Because we haven't incentivized the production or use of renewables, right? Yeah. But when you think about it, though, that is way more sustainable right? Not because of like the consumption of energy, that's sure, right?
Yeah.
But by having differing methods that create that power, right? When one goes down because of whatever, you have two backups or three, right? Whether it's SMR, nuclear, or like wind or hydro or solar, right? Or combination of all those things. So like pick target areas to build them where you can like least amount of damage to the population, right? Where you have the most environmental factors to like drive that and like increase that over time. It's like, why aren't we doing that? Those are the low hanging fruits. Catch up, you know? But
Good point. Good point.
We can buy this, you know, we're not taking that holistic even intention of building it. And like policy is going to have to transform, right? We're seeing that. And we're going to have to start seeing people who understand technology and AI, like leading in those spaces, and institutions helping lead in those spaces to help governance to catch up. Because we can't keep this pace. And the amount of money that we've lost just from like not listening to the public or considering them a factor is astronomical, and no one's talking about it, you know? So it's like
that's a good question. That's a good point. And maybe I'm going to ask Steve, and I know you've done quite a bit of AI, you know, work that you've done things in the production and so forth. Has there been any type of discussion about, you know, informing you know, the client, you know, the clients will say, I want this use case solved, right? And all right, but what does it look to be a good AI citizen from a stand of, you know, okay, are we utilizing resources correctly? You know, how are we actually making an impact? What does a good AI project look like relative to, say, you know, building an AI data center?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
It's a tough one, I hope.
Yeah, it is. It is a tough one. You keep having me. I feel like I'm back one of the big four days. So I don't know if it's a good or sort of like a bad sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think it's more of maybe a framework. Maybe, you know.
I like frameworks.
Yeah, a framework or maybe even a checklist, right? To think about the ways to kind of guide and think about what's good and what's not, right? So, you know, in my mind, the first thing is like, where does the water come from, right? So I think good deals, if you will, you know, commits to maybe recycled water, non-drinking water before the construction starts, right? Oftentimes, companies start these projects and then halfway through decide, oh, we can't use this or we can't do this. Like I think that was like the Google facility in Ohio had this issue where they promised to use 100% recycled water, but then only after, you know, the community starts to create an uproar. Yeah, exactly. So that's one, and I think you have to implement real limits, right? Not just, you know, promise that you're going to have real limits out there, and then what's the actual limit? To the point that Brian was making earlier, how do we work on creating that efficiency? And so making sure that that hard number that they say is not just a market employee, but we can kind of hold them accountable to that. And then the other piece for me is like being ready at the onset to understand who takes the blame when something goes wrong.
Oh,
right?
yeah, right.
So
the buck stops where?
I got one on this.
Exactly. So that's, to me, that's all part of the deal. And I think the other thing as a consultant, when I'm talking to clients, is you need to buy some goodwill, if you will, right? So one of the things is who pays for this local water system. So like, again, I don't want to shout out any company here, but for Meta, I think, again, like I said, I did my research on some of this. I know they're building something in Kansas City, and they had to invest, I think it was like over $500 million in that local water recycling infrastructure just to get approved. To me, that's a sign of a serious deal, right? That's a sign of a company that really wants to impact the community. So they're paying for the upgrade and the infrastructure within that community by spending their money. They're going to benefit from it, obviously, but the community is also benefiting. So that checklist is what I will have as, okay, this is a good deal. This is one as a client that I will support and recommend for you guys to move forward with.
Yeah.
Before you jump, Jess, real quick question: when you were doing your research, and maybe this is not specific to the Meta example you used, did you find out how they're going about maybe messaging to the community? Because the community is going to hear Meta, Facebook is bad.
Yeah.
They're going to hear data center. There's water going to be used, and they're going to hear my electricity rates are going to go through the roof. As part of this upgrading that Meta is doing, are they doing a better go-to marketing messaging or something along the line? Did they do something like that?
Yeah, they have a big PR behind this.
Okay.
So they're going to the town halls, right? You know, raising the reasons why they're doing it, the benefit for the community. So they're like taking like a grassroots approach, right? They're sending letters and mails to the community, informing them of what's coming and what they're doing, right? How this deal is going to benefit them. So it's probably like more of a political election, sort of like a campaign approach that they're taking to this. And I think it's effective. I think it's worked because I think, again, there's still some pushback, right? But it's probably a little bit less pushback with them highlighting some of these benefits and the sort of infrastructure that they're creating in their community.
Yeah, they're
great.
in the community.
Yep. Jess, go ahead. I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And it's like those are the kinds of examples and stuff that like we need to see. And I think a lot of tech leaders are stepping up in different spaces, right? And like morality wise, shared engagement with public. But like another example was like in Arizona and like Tucson, and there's huge pushback right over the Colorado water rights. I think like AWS was like the anchor of that one. Like when the public responded, like AWS backed out as the anchor, you know? And I think like that's the kind of stuff like it doesn't make the news because it's not about like big money or whatever, right? But it's like these tech companies making like some important decisions considering the factor of the public health that I think is like what's going to build that trust. Just like what Meta like investing in the local systems, you know, that's what the public needs to see. They need to see actions, not words. They need to see these guys like showing up and actually doing things, you know, and saying like, yeah, we're considering the entire like we're here. Let's do this as a team, you know. As we
All right. Actually, so let me Jess, and this is also to Brian. I mean, you mentioned Arizona, and I think it was AWS pulling out. I don't know who that was, you know, who really pulled out, but you know, that's the Southwest region, and that is typically a very, you know, deserty, you know, low water rainfall type of place. Should we really be, and maybe this goes back to policy, Steve, right? Should we even just consider building, you know, new data centers in these, you know, water stressed regions? I mean, just the optics look pretty bad, right? I mean, do we even consider it?
Go ahead, Steve.
I mean, to me, this may be controversial, but I think I think banning entire regions is the wrong way to start kind of think about it, right? I believe that banning the location is sort of like don't ban the location, ban the method, right? As we've been talking about today, right? If a company can prove that it's not competing with the local resources, I think where they're building this data center shouldn't really be the fight, right? Again, I think if they're going to build it in the desert and there's some innovative approach that they're going to take to not only, again, you talk about maybe this town now that's like this devoid of a ton of water, there's some innovative things that they're going to do, right? To improve other aspects of that community. Like, to me, I'm all for it, right? Like, I don't want to put this umbrella out because, you know, this place is already short of water. They shouldn't build there. I think we have to be, you know, Jess always talked about this. Let's use our brains, right? Let's be innovative. Let's think about solutions that's worthwhile. So I don't focus on like flat out banning certain locations. To me, I think there's gonna be some ripple effects, unintended consequences by doing that.
Yeah, let the data scientists in on this one, right? Like just thinking about last year or the year before, I was working with Yale, right? We were working on like localization, like policy work, right? And so like the data collection of that was absolutely a nightmare. Getting local data, like we're like faxing and calling like local state, you know, at the very local level, city level. And you know what we found though, completely unrelated to like what we're talking about, but there's some cities that are like ghost cities. You know, they've got like 2 people registered there. You know, and if you look at the localization of the data, just like we do in NGO work, we do in academia work, we do in medical work, right, and drug discovery, I think Steve is 100% right. It's a case-by-case localization layer, and like balancing like what's the impact, the pros and the cons, and the long-term effect, and just, you know.
So I definitely support that idea of you know, getting the data scientists involved, but you know, I think that there needs to be of a cross-functional team, not just data scientists, environmental engineers, right, contractors, right, people who build stuff, right. I mean, you know,
they'll find your spots, right? But right.
Yeah, Brian, what do you think?
Yeah, I believe even today in the property segment where you've got brokers that are out there looking to capture or identify sites that are good data center sites. So there's already a sub-market going on of people trying to optimize their proximity to power, their proximity to water, to create these opportunities for companies. So I think sites are going to continue to be developed. And then in terms of working with communities, like in the case of building a data center in the desert, is Geoexchange or the underlying conditions possible to have cooling without impacting the local water resources.
Yeah, like China's been putting data centers underwater, and we're talking about putting them out in space now. I don't know how that will work, but
in Norway underground, right? Yep. But tell us about geothermal. Like, tell us about your experience with like the AI build in your place.
So, so we're doing we're doing a Geoexchange building right now. And,
wonderful. Okay.
And so underneath the building, the ground is 67 degrees year round. Okay. And so we're able to heat and cool the building, and we only have to overcome a 4-degree temperature difference between the earth temperature and the desired temperature. So you could have a situation, I'm making this up, in Arizona where you could have a closed loop cooling system where the ground is forever at 60 degrees, and then utilize that intrinsic land cooling in lieu of in water to do the cooling.
And you've done
that makes sense.
You did geothermal.
That's really cool.
Back, though, right?
Where it's like a car's water use. It's a closed loop system, and maybe that's a solution for building in climates like that.